Hello, again. Welcome back. Still don't really know what I'm gonna call this. I don't have a name for it quite yet. I don't know if I ever will. But either way, today I am talking about a movie that I actually have a physical copy of. I had mentioned previously that I want to talk about, or that I want to show off physical copies of the movies that I talk about. And this is no different because the physical copy that I have of this movie is fucking incredible. They have this gorgeous goddamn steelbook of this movie that came out pretty shortly, not even pretty shortly after the movie released. This thing took ages to come out on physical media. I have no idea why. Oh my god, look at this thing. Oh, I adore it so much. Spine is really solid on that too. Fits perfectly with like the whole aesthetic that they're going for on this thing. I love it so much. Of course, movie's Transformers 1, the most recent animated Transformers movie. I think the first animated theatrical Transformers release. Apologies for messing with my hair. I need to get a haircut. I don't have my bangs how I like them right now. But um, it is the first theatrical release of an animated Transformers movie since the original G1 1986 movie, which I do also want to talk about at some point because I have a lot of thoughts about that movie too. But I want to talk about the things leading up to this movie before I talk about it. The first trailer for this movie came out, and it was atrocious. It was horrible. Um, I watched the trailer for this thing, and my first thought was, okay, it's for babies. Understood. Like, it's Transformers. It's a property for kids. Of course it's for babies. Probably isn't my thing. I probably will not go see it. And then, because like the trailer was just so packed full of like, here's a funny, and then here's another funny. And that was kind of it. And they gave away the plot being about Megatron and Optimus Prime being those characters, being Orion Pax and D16. And I mean, if you know your shit, that's obvious. There's stuff with Orion Pax in the original 86 series, but I think it could have potentially been better to be left up to, like that there's the big moment at the very end that feels like, oh yeah, this would have been good if this wasn't like addressed at all in the media campaigns for this movie. But it was, so whatever. Ultimately it doesn't matter because the movie's out there now. Shit's been done, whatever. But um then the movie came out and I started hearing really good things about it. My partner recommended it to me. My partner's not huge on Transformers, not how I am at least, but because I'm a big Transformers guy. You can't really see him right now, but I pointed him out in the previous video. I have my YOLO Park, Starscream, Megatron, and Optimus Prime back there. I also have hang on a moment, just a second here. Ugh, I have this Shockwave model kit. I like this guy a lot. He's fucking sweet. I have a couple other model kits up there. I've got a couple Gundams up here. I got a Death Scythe. I put this together before I watched Gundam Wing. I started watching it today. Um, Maybe I'll talk about those movies at some point because there's a couple of them. There's the ones for like the original movie or for the original series that's just like three movies that encapsulate the series. There's the OVA for Gundam Wing. There's the most recent one that came out that I have seen that I actually really liked that takes place in the original continuity in the Universal Century. But back to Transformers. Um, the movie came out, and I heard really good stuff about it. And then I went to go see it. And something that still kind of bothers me about this movie, but not nearly as much as when the trailer first came out, is the animation style. Having seen the movie, I like it a lot. But there'll be frame or a shot or two that I'm just like, that doesn't look quite right. Um, I'm also not huge on them having tongues. Sentinel Prime has a tongue in this movie. It's all the shit. It reminds me a lot of the Michael Bay movies where like Hound has a beard and Sentinel has a beard and like Frenzy has hair. All of the like weird human shit that they do to the Transformers in those movies that just looks really strange. Obviously, it's animated here, so it doesn't look nearly as weird. I actually kind of like the tongue detailing that they do to Sentinel. It's like I don't know how to describe it, but um, I like it a lot. I think it looks fine. You know, if they're gonna, if they had to give him a tongue, it looks as good as it can. But I liked it a lot. I loved it, actually. I was kind of blown away by this movie when I first went to go see it. I had absolutely no idea what was going to be in this movie. I don't even think I knew that fucking Bumblebee was in this movie. Um, that said, I have some problems with it. For like a good 90% of this movie, I absolutely love it. But let's get the bad out of the way first so that I don't have to talk about the bad shit in this movie because there's very little of it. So the first thing is oh, what is the first thing? I don't remember. Oh yeah. This is two halves of a movie. It's very strange. This movie does not follow I mean, I guess it technically does. It's written in a three-act structure. Oh, excuse me. But it's there's a very clear first half, second half of this movie. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because there's a certain event that takes place that just completely changes everything that's going on in this movie, and that's when the second half of the movie starts. And it doesn't help that it's exactly halfway through the movie. Um, because the way that things happen from there, it just feels like there's no first, third, second, third, 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 like there should be, you know? And I really don't take issue with that. Ultimately, I think it favors the pacing a lot better, for it to be like that, because that way it feels like the movie goes by faster. And I feel like this movie is very well paced. I don't take issue with the pacing with this movie like some people seem to. I've heard a lot of people really don't like the first half of this movie, and I just don't get that. I think it's really great. I like seeing Orion and D16 fucking around and like almost getting themselves killed in Iacon. Was it 5,000? I can't remember. I've seen the movie like four times and I don't remember. I think it's 5,000. But um that's just a little thing that irks me about it. But ultimately it's such an inconsequential thing, you know. And then there's I really don't even remember what else I was going to say. I don't remember the other bad thing about this movie. Oh, yeah, it's that the post-credit scene is in the trailer. That's fucked up. I think that's dumb. Obviously, they want to do the like, oh yeah, Megatron is D16. We're gonna talk about that in the marketing campaign for it. I just think that was a bad call. Um, it reminds me a lot of the Amazing Spider-Man 2 trailer when the final shot of the movie was the final shot of the trailer. It's of him swinging the manhole cover at Paul Giamatti. Like, okay, it's just a really bizarre choice to do that way. At least this is a good movie. Amazing Spider-Man 2 isn't even a good movie. Um, but yeah, I think that's really it for stuff I don't like about this movie. Um, because I think it nails absolutely everything else. they when they introduced the G1 Decepticons, their voices are changed ever so slightly. Like Shockwave or Shockwave. Shockwave is a lot less exaggerated, which I don't. I mean, I love that he's exaggerated in G1. I read the comics in his exaggerated voice from G1, but I can get why they didn't do it like that. The movie wants you to take what's going on seriously, you know? And it's very hard to take what he says seriously when he sounds like that. And they also made Soundwave's voice like gravelly, which you know, I I'm always open to change and stuff like that. So I think it's fine. Ultimately, it changes nothing, obviously. And then I'm going to use this as a trampoline into the stuff that I like about this movie. Steve Buscemi as Starscream. I talked about this in the intro video for my movie reviews. I love I love Steve Buscemi as Starscream in this fucking movie because he's just doing the Steve Buscemi voice and it's perfect. It's perfect. He just sounds so it just works so well. He sounds so much like Starscream should, and not in like the original like Cobra Commander Starscream voice. Voiced by the same guy, by the way. If you didn't know that. I found that out like a month ago. If even. I didn't I'm not gonna pretend I knew that for a long ass time. But um yeah, I love him in this movie a lot because he's doing a great job. I mean, Steve Buscemi, one of the greatest actors that's still alive right now. He's in Fargo and other stuff too, probably, but I couldn't tell you. If you ask me to name three Steve Buscemi movies, I name Fargo and Transformers One, and then you just have to shoot me, I guess. Oh, he's in one of the Michael Bay movies, isn't he? I'm pretty sure he's in one of the Michael Bay movies. I don't remember which one it is. It's either Dark of the Moon or Age of Extinction. I know he's in one of them. And now I'm just gonna gloss over it. Um, because I have another bad thing to say, I guess. I don't care for them alluding to the fact that B is gonna lose his voice at some point. Because they're doing like the whole shtick about how he talked so much. They're like implying that, oh yeah, eventually he's gonna lose his voice. I just don't really care for that. It's so nothing. I guess him losing his voice is a Bayism that I don't know. It just seems so weird to put that in this movie that's so clearly not connected to those other movies. Uh, and then there's the big elephant in the room while we're on the topic of voices of Peter Cullen not voicing Optimus Prime in this movie, or I guess Orion Pax. It's the first time that's happened in like a bazillion years, I think. This isn't like when Brian Tyree Henry voiced Megatron or D16 in this movie. It didn't matter because Frank Welker hasn't voiced Megatron in a while. In the Bayverse movies, he voices him, or he doesn't even voice Megatron. Hugo Weaving voices Megatron for the first three movies, and then when he comes back as Galvatron, he is voiced by Frank Welker because Hugo Weaving thought the movies were dog shit, so he left. I don't disagree. I don't care for those movies very much. Um, but yeah, so it's Chris Hemsworth in this movie, and Chris Hemsworth has been having a hell of a year because I think he's great in this movie. There are when I first heard his voice in the movie, I was almost not convinced it was even Chris Hemsworth to begin with because it doesn't sound like him at all. Uh, but like it's so strange because it should sound like Chris Hemsworth, but it just doesn't. Because it's like he's in Furiosa as well, also incredible in Furiosa. I couldn't believe it. Such a turnaround from playing Thor for like 15 years and being in what was it, Extraction on Netflix? There's two of those. Did you know that there are two of those? Did you know that there was even one of those? I bet you didn't. He's great in Furiosa, but even in Furiosa, he still sounds like Chris Hemsworth. because he's allowed to be Australian in that movie. Um, but here he just doesn't sound like himself, and I think that's for the best. I think if he sounded like Chris Hemsworth, it would be weird. And there are some lines where he like his Chris Hemsworth voice slips out a little bit, and it sounds a little off. But for the other 98% of the movie, he's doing a great job. And that's not even to I don't mean to imply that he's doing a bad job when he sounds like Chris Hemsworth. It's just a little distracting. But uh, Brian Tyree Henry as Megatron is also incredible. One thing I really like about this movie is how they like merged Beast Wars and the G1 shit into one. Transformers one, you might even call it. Because Alpha Trion is in this movie. Alpha Trion is a Beast Wars character, which is like super weird that he's in this because Beast Wars takes place on like prehistoric Earth, prior to the events of G1, long prior to the events of G1, obviously. Even though at the end of Beast Wars, I think it's at the end of Beast Wars where they like find Teletran 1 and it's about to wake up all of the destroyed Autobots. Oh, because that's a thing in all of the Transformers continuities is that they've been on Earth for like a million billion years. Aside from like the Skybound comics, the most recent comic run, they like just showed up, or at least they just got rebuilt. Teletran 1 might have crashed a long time ago, but they like just got rebuilt and now they're interacting with the humans. That Skybound run is really good, by the way. Read that run. It's incredible. I need to put it on my shelf. In this corner over here, I have the second volume of it, the Elita 1 variant, and I have the Optimus variant on my shelf, I think. Really good run. Read it. It's incredible. But Alpha Trion is voiced by Lawrence Fishburne in this movie, and I think if he were voiced by anybody else, this movie would be not as good as it is because I'm going to talk about the scene now because there's a scene in this movie that makes the movie. It's one of those things that almost makes the rest of the movie worse because when you're watching the movie, you're just waiting for this scene to happen. It's The Fall. I think people have been calling it online, where B16 says, "I'm done saving you." Spoilers, by the way, for this movie that's been out for a while now. Um, and then he drops him, and then Orion falls into like the core of the planet Cybertron, which is Primus. Also, Primus is like an ancient transformer that made the original Primes, who are kind of like the 12 Apostles, except not really at all in any kind of way. I just thought that would be funny to say. Primus is Jesus, and the Primes are his apostles, except they're not technically ever alive at the same time. But he is handed the Matrix of Leadership, and it's contrasted to B16 uh, ripping Sentinel in half, and that's not a joke. He picks him up and he tears him in half. That's the scene where you see Sentinel's tongue. Um, and he kills him. He fucking executes Sentinel Prime. He fatalities him. And it's Lawrence Fishburne just going absolutely insane on the on his vocals. He's talking about the matrix of leadership, and you have the I am Megatron line where he finally gets the cannon on his arm. He like forms up the cannon on his arm. I gasped out loud because I'm stupid. And then Lawrence Fishburne delivers the rise, Optimus Prime, and then he shoots up through the fucking annals of Cybertron to go fight D16. I cried. I literally cried in the theater, and that's not a joke. That's not a joke. That's not exaggeration. I cried because I was so overwhelmed and excited by what was going on in this movie. Because it's a good Transformers movie. It's a Transformers movie that's more than passable. I've only been a Transformers fan as long as I think since just before Rise of the Beasts was in theaters, but I have so much passion for this series. Um, I love it so dearly, and I watched the Michael Bay movies. I will talk about the Michael Bay movies eventually, once I finally get the guts to rewatch them. I'm gonna make my partner come over and watch them with me. If you're listening to this, that's what we're watching next. We're watching the Michael Bay Transformers movies, and there's nothing you can do about it. Um, those movies are terrible. They're bad. It's not a hot take to say that those movies are bad, but then Bumblebee came out, and everybody was like, "Wait, Transformers might be back." And then Rise of the Beasts came out, and nobody saw it. Nobody still has seen it. Funny story that I have about Rise of the Beasts. You know, I probably won't talk about Rise of the Beasts at any point because there's not really anything to talk about with Rise of the Beasts. Um, at the very end, when the guy from In the Heights, I don't remember his name, uh, he gets handed the card, and he flips it over, and it's got the GI Joe logo on the back. My stepdad and I broke into hysterical laughter because that's so fucking stupid. That's so dumb. Are you kidding, dude? Get back. The only way that I will accept that Transformers and GI Joe crossover movie is if they bring back the original voice actor for both Starscream and Cobra Commander and have him do both characters. But aside from that, I absolutely reject the idea of that movie existing in the first place. Anyway, back to the movie I'm actually talking about. Um, this movie came out, and it's good. It's not just passable. The Transformers movies have been passable recently. They were bad. Well, they started off really good. That 86 movie still holds up really well. Junkatrons and Dare to Be Stupid aside. And then Baby movies come out and they're atrocious and they're awful. And you see John Turturro's ass and Bumblebee pisses on a guy and give me your face and God, I just don't want to talk about it. And then Bumblebee comes out and it's fine. And Rise of the Beast comes out and it's a little bit worse than fine, but it's not quite bad, and just nobody cares. And then Transformers 1 comes out and there's like the whole TF hype guy situation that causes like 3 times as many people to see this movie as probably would have, because it deserves it, because this movie tried something new, and Hasbro said fuck you for it. I don't know if you guys heard, but since this movie came out, Hasbro has announced that they're not doing movies anymore. That they're just not doing any Transformers or Power Rangers or G.I. Joe or anything anymore. But then apparently there's like also a Transformers 1 sequel and a new Power Rangers movie coming out. I don't know. I might talk about that when the news about it comes out. But I love this movie. I love this movie so very much. I don't really have any issues with it. It's another five. Yeah, that's right. My first two fives on this channel are Nosferatu and Transformers 1. Because it's my show and I can do whatever I want. I can't get over this steelbook, man. It's so fucking pretty. I love this art on the back of it. Of like all of them and their and the spoilers on the back of the box. Shouldn't buy a physical copy of a movie if you haven't seen it, though, to be fair. Um, yeah, it's a five. It will always be a five unless I go insane, in which case, the if I ever don't give if you ask me what I would give Transformers 1 on a 5-star scale and I say anything other than 5, I've been taken and replaced by somebody else. Your Capgras syndrome is real. I'm gone and I've been replaced by somebody else, and you should alert the authorities. But yeah, Transformers 1 forever. It might